I was confused because it has to go to not my YouTube, but the custom Minneapolis DFL YouTube. All right, now I'm hearing myself, so I'm gonna mute myself here. All right, well, thanks for the reminder to have this on YouTube live for everyone. With that, if you were on YouTube, you missed my quick little rundown of how caucuses are working this year. But if you don't know, go to the Minneapolis DFL website. There's a really good rundown, minneapolisdfl.org/caucus, I believe is the website, or just minneapolis.dfl.org. You can learn more about how the caucuses are working this year. So with that, I think we can probably get started with candidates right away. I don't think I need to wait around and belabor the point. And if people have questions on how caucuses work as we move forward with this, please feel free to let me know. I'm going to go to speaker view, and then I'm going to start with our first candidate, which is Jeremy Schrader for City Council. So I'll unmute you and then take it away, Jeremy.
All right, thanks, Brian. So hi, everybody. It's good to see you all. My name is Jeremy Schrader, and I'm honored to be your City Council member. I want to start by acknowledging the fact that it's been a really tough year, but through our struggles and our trauma, we've really learned so much about what is possible right now. I'm proud to serve Ward 11 because our community stands for what we can achieve when we believe in people. The city is being tested now, but I have faith in us, and that's why I'm excited to run for re-election. For the last 20 years, I've worked in community advocacy, pushing for a safer, more equitable community for us all. I've done this work as an attorney, as an executive director at multiple nonprofits, and now as a city council member. More than just sitting in these roles, I got things done. I led the development of Amnesty International's organizational-wide strategic plan when I was on their national board. I was the executive director of the organization that made Illinois the 4th state in the nation to abolish the modern death penalty. And on a local level, I secured funds for the picnic shelter at Triangle Park when I was the vice chair of the Hale Page Diamond Lake Neighborhood Association. During my career, I focused and achieved outcomes, whether that was on a national level or right here at home. Reflecting on my first term at City Hall, I've continued to be focused on outcomes, and I'm proud of the consistent results I've been able to deliver for Ward 11. Our community cares about big issues like public safety, affordable housing, and fighting climate change. I'm proud to have pushed our city government to meet the challenges before us. My focus has always been on the safety of everyone in the city and here in Ward 11. It's important to think back to those nights after the police killed George Floyd, when everyone in the city was processing the raw pain of seeing the latest police killing and realizing that people across the globe were watching the exact same videos. Our city needed to be brought together, and something needed to be done. Our neighbors who were in the streets at that time felt a moral obligation to stay in the streets till they felt that their leaders were committed to transformational change. After multi-million-dollar investments and decades of promises to reform our police department, that system did not protect us. That moment demanded moral leadership and to hold ourselves accountable for the change we've talked about for decades. I stand by my decision to commit to transformative change. And since that time, I've made pragmatic choices to reach that goal, like the Safety for All budget compromise I passed with my council colleagues last year that builds the infrastructure for a holistic public safety system. I supported adding more mental health responders, expanding the city's violence interruption work, and building an infrastructure for handling non-emergency calls. I also authored an amendment to add $5 million to the budget for the police overtime this year, while adding more accountability on how that money is used. I also voted for every officer the mayor proposed to fund in his budget during my time on council. And most recently, I'm one of the authors of the Transforming Public Safety Charter Amendment, which will create a new Department of Public Safety, including armed and trained officers, but also including so much more, like mental health responders, victim services, violence prevention, all of these systems working together to make us safer. Everyone deserves a safe, stable, and affordable place to live, and I intend to get us there. To get to that goal, we need to preserve affordable housing and also create new affordable housing. On preservation, it means empowering our tenants and giving good landlords the tools they need to keep their housing affordable, like my advance notice of sale ordinance and my upcoming tenant opportunity to purchase ordinance. I've also had success creating new affordable housing by authoring the inclusionary zoning ordinance, which mandates that affordable units are part of new developments, and expanding the zoning code to allow ultra-affordable, sustainable housing. Providing safe, stable, and affordable housing for us all will take innovation. It will take changing and challenging the housing market to do more. And these are things I've done consistently through my first term at City Hall. We need to have the courage to confront the climate crisis head on and to make sure Minneapolis is doing everything it can to keep our residents and our natural resources insulated from harm. That's why I led efforts to declare a climate emergency in our city, providing us a platform to do more. Some of the ways I've supported this is by authoring a sustainable building policy and a social cost of carbon for the city. Finally, the city just won an award for my ordinance on residential energy disclosure, which helps home buyers and renters compare the energy efficiency of their future home while pairing this information with programs to help pay for green improvements. We absolutely need to take action now, and I've been leading the way at City Hall. Finally, I've done the work to build the relationships to make this city work for Ward 11. And beyond just those, I've built relationships throughout our region. I'm proud to have earned the endorsement of Attorney General Keith Ellison, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, State Senator Scott Dibble, Hennepin County Board Chair Marion Green, Hennepin County Commissioner Angela Conley, and State Representatives Jamie Long, Emma Greenman, and Aisha Gomez. I'm proud of these endorsements because these are fellow community leaders who recognize that leading is about improving outcomes and people's lives. Going forward, we have a choice. We can work hard for our dreams, or we can fall back on our fears. After a career working for a better world, I ran on a platform of pragmatic optimism. I've gotten a lot done these last 3 years, so much that I can't list it all here, but please go and visit my website at jeremyschrader.org to learn more. I look forward to keeping up this pace alongside all of you in my next term. Thank you very much, and I hope to have your support.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. One thing I will throw out there, I don't think I told folks this at the outset, format for this evening, which I didn't really spell out for those of you who might not have seen it, is we're having all the candidates who were able to join from City Council and Park Board, both District 5 and District 6, have some time to speak. If you have questions for the candidates, I mean, by all means, feel free to personal message them if they're still on Zoom, and maybe they can get to you, but we're not hosting any kind of separate Q&A with the candidates. So I didn't make that clear at the beginning and just wanted to make sure folks were aware of that. So with that, I think the next person on our speaker list here is Dylan Gurna. Hopefully I'm getting your name right, Dylan, and I just hit for you to unmute, so you could take it away.
All right, thanks, Brian, and you did get it right. As you stated, my name is Dylan Gurna, he, him, his pronouns, and I am a candidate running for Minneapolis City Council to represent Ward 11. I want to start out by saying thank you for allowing me the opportunity to briefly introduce myself to each and every one of you for our virtual caucus night. And I also want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to participate in this year's important election. For those of you that I have not spoken to or do not know me, a little bit about me. I was born and raised in a rural mining community in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. I was raised by an amazing single mother of 5 and by my grandparents. My mom spent her career serving others as a nurse's aide and a respiratory therapist, while also serving tables part-time to help make ends meet. My grandfather helped support our family, working as a paramedic for over 40 years, saving lives and serving our community. So service to our community has been something ingrained in me since I was a child. And growing up, we faced many financial hardships and challenges, much like members of our own community, and had to lean on support through food and other assistance programs to make ends meet. At 18, after coming out to my family, I moved to Minneapolis. And I've lived in various parts of the city of Minneapolis for the greater part of 14 years, primarily as a renter. More specifically, relative to Ward 11, I moved to Ward 11 in 2019, where my ex-partner and I bought a home in the Winona neighborhood, and now I currently reside in the Windham neighborhood. I moved to Minneapolis because it's always been a beacon of hope for me. As far back as I can remember, coming here to shop for school clothes and other trips as a kid, it served as that beacon of hope. And really, when I made the decision to move, Minneapolis was the obvious answer. A little bit about me from a career standpoint. In 2018, I served as the deputy campaign manager to elect David Hutchinson as the first openly gay sheriff in the Midwest to serve Hennepin County residents. I currently work for the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office as the Public Initiatives Coordinator, where I work to identify and develop initiatives to help prevent crime, build community trust, increase public safety, and expand community education and awareness of services. Some of those efforts include expansion and creation of our drug disposal events, securing funding and putting together a program for a county-wide opioid education and Narcan training to help support our efforts to the over 1.2 million residents. Prior to this role, I've been a small business owner, and I've worked in leadership roles in healthcare, recruiting, retail, and nonprofit industries. Giving back has always been at the foundation of what I do. I've spent 10 years as the Director of Safety for Twin Cities Pride, creating a welcoming environment for all across our city. I moved to serve on City Council in light of many critical issues facing our city, and many of these issues are very personal to me. Having experienced homelessness myself, violence in our community, discrimination, issues with housing, and others, I feel that my lived experience, in addition to my professional experience, allows me to really understand these issues more intimately. As a candidate, I have focused my campaign around our fundamental responsibility, and that is to keep our community safe. And that starts in implementing smart public safety policy, in addition to comprehensive police reform that truly identifies the gaps in our service and invests in mental health and violence prevention, while also tackling our violent crime that so many of our neighbors have experienced. We also have to help our small businesses. As we all know, so many of our business owners in our community have lost everything or close to losing everything because of COVID-19. In addition to supporting our small businesses, we have to focus on growing affordable housing, pathways to homeownership, equity, and just identifying what those smart paths forward for our future growth look like. In addition to the other components that I've discussed, we have to focus on support for youth as we look at violence prevention, as we look at housing and support services that the city offers. And when we start to talk about public safety reform and how we move forward, focusing on youth is so critical to that. I started this campaign with one focus, and that's putting people first. And I believe we've been elevating the concerns of residents throughout this ward and the city in our effort to create community through this process. I invite you to learn more at dgmpls.com about my campaign, and you can also get involved and learn more about my vision in more depth there. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity today, and I hope each and every one of your families are doing well in our pandemic.
Thanks, Dylan. Next, I will turn it over to Emily Koski. Emily, you are unmuted and go ahead.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, Ward 11. My name's Emily Koski, and I'm running to represent you on the Minneapolis City Council. Thank you to our ward committee chairs here in Ward 11 and the Minneapolis DFL for planning this event tonight. I want to take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm running for City Council. I'm a lifelong resident of Minneapolis. I live in the Page neighborhood with my husband, Mike, and our two kids, Croy and Iris. Croy is a 5th grader at Field Middle School, and Iris is a 2nd grader at Hale Elementary. My dad, Al Hofstad, was a city council member in the 3rd Ward, a chairperson of the Met Council, and a 2-term mayor of Minneapolis. I'm engaged in the community in a variety of ways. I serve as a member of the Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity Leadership Council, as a site council member at Hale Elementary School, and as a member of the Minneapolis Public Schools Parent Legislative Committee. Additionally, in the past, I served as a board member of 261 Fearless, the Waite Park Community Council, and the Waite Park School Site Council. I have a depth of professional experience. I worked at Target Corporation. I owned and operated a small business in Minneapolis for 13 years, and now I work as a director of client development at Antenna, a consulting and staffing firm where I support businesses small to large here in the Twin Cities by connecting them with marketing experts. My portfolio includes everything from a $20 million chocolate manufacturer to General Mills to Marvin Windows. I launched my campaign for City Council just 3 short months ago, and since then, I've put in the work to connect with our community, build relationships with leadership and organizations citywide, and consult with experts. I'm working hard so that I can be the city council member our community deserves. Right now, Minneapolis is facing many serious challenges: the COVID-19 pandemic, racial injustice and inequity, public safety reform. With the recent killing of Daunte Wright and the conviction in the Derek Chauvin trial, these challenges are ever present on our minds. This moment requires elected leaders who will work together, bring all voices to the table, and find real solutions. Our leadership should not be operating in a vacuum. This role requires leaders that are committed to working together with members of our community, leadership citywide, organizations, and experts. Our community doesn't just want a representative on the Minneapolis City Council, they want a voice on the Minneapolis City Council. Being the city council member for Ward 11 is about being a part of the community, being aware of the issues that affect our neighbors, and being dedicated to hearing all voices from all sides, regardless of the topic. This race is about choosing the type of leader we want to represent us on the Minneapolis City Council. It's about finding leaders who will work together to build a stronger, more inclusive community. I am a connector, I am a problem solver, and I bring a balanced approach. It is my personal goal as a candidate and as a city council member to have each member of this community seen and heard. I will continue to immerse myself in our community, engage in open conversations, earn your trust, and bring your voices to the table. It's time for us to work together to address the challenges facing Minneapolis. It's time for us to work together to make our community safe, fight for justice and equity, support our businesses, create affordable housing, and sustain our environment. I'm running for city council because I believe in this community, and I have decided to put my values into action. Now is the time for us to unite, to work together, to build a Minneapolis we are all proud of. I am running for the DFL endorsement in the Minneapolis City Council Ward 11 election, and I'm asking for your support. I'm asking for you to register for the Minneapolis caucuses and conventions, run to be a delegate to the Ward 11 convention, and to rank me as your #1 choice for the DFL endorsement in Ward 11. I'm Emily Koski, and I'm running to represent you on the Minneapolis City Council. Thank you for having me here tonight.
Great, thanks, Emily. And next, I think we have Stephanie from the District 5 Park Board. Stephanie, hopefully you're still on. I know you told me you wanted to try to move up today. Let me there you are. You should be unmuted and ready to go.
Thanks, Brian. Can you hear me okay? Fantastic. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Musich. I'm your 5th District Park Board Commissioner. The 5th District is a pretty large park board district. It has a number of city council wards within it. So the district in totality begins at the airport, goes north to about 36th Street, starts at the river, and goes all the way over to 35W. It's a pretty large area. It has a number of regional parks within it. And I've been representing you in this capacity since 2014. When I took office, I had found it very difficult to connect to park activities that were occurring, as well as to find out what the heck was going on around planning. So to help residents be better informed about park activities, I started a newsletter. I have the only park board newsletter in the city, and I publish it once a month or twice a month if there's a lot of stuff going on. It's a great opportunity to connect to what's happening in the parks. And hopefully my battery doesn't die on me here. I'm helping my son move home from college today. So it's been a little bit of a crazy day, but I'm excited to be here and talking with you. The way that I approach government is a little bit different from folks that are tied into specific constituencies. I feel that my job as an elected official in a nonpartisan office is to listen to everyone who has an opinion on a topic. And when there is not consensus around an issue, I try to make sure that I learn a lot about it by talking to experts and scientists and reading all the materials available to me to learn the background of what's being voted upon, to ensure that when I make a decision, it's an educated decision, and I try to reflect what my constituents have told me is important to them. It's been an interesting 4 years on the park board, with almost entirely turning over to a new board in 2017. It's election. We've made a lot of changes around the way that we do business at the park board, and not all of them are things that I can support. I really would like to see us go back to being very clear with the public about what we're doing and doing it in a consistent way, moving things through committee before they're considered at the full board, and ensuring that the process is something that people can feel connected to and feel that they can trust. So it's been a little challenging in that hasn't always happened. There's been a lot of suspending of the rules and bypassing of committees. And I'm very hopeful that with this year's election, we will see more candidates being elected that believe that it's important to follow process in a consistent manner so that people don't feel like they've been cut out of the ability to help influence decisions being made by the people that they elected to represent them. I have a website where you can read about all the things that I've accomplished since my time on the park board. It's musicforparks.com. That's music with an H on the end, FORPARKS.com. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. If you're struggling to find me, you can also email me through the park board website to ask questions that you have about what's been going on in the parks. It's been a pretty crazy year that we've been experiencing, and I know that that's been challenging for a lot of people because they feel not as safe in the system as they have in the past. Thank you so much again for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. And I hope you all have a wonderful spring out in the parks, because it's a beautiful time to watch the birds come in and see your neighbors after a long winter. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. And I'm glad that your battery held out. So great.
It's my lucky night.
Exactly. All right. Well, I will move on to, I think there was perhaps another candidate for District 5 Park Board, Charles Rogers, and I did not see him on. So Charles, if I missed you, please poke me in the chat or raise your hand. But otherwise, I will move on to the 6th District Park Board. And I think for those candidates, we're starting with Barb Schleifer, I think. And Barb, you can let me know if I butchered your name. I apologize. You are now, well, it says I'm asking you to unmute. So hopefully, I don't know why it just won't let me unmute you. It might be because you're on the phone. Barb, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can. Take it away.
Okay. So thank you so much, Brian, and others for making this event happen. It's nice to gather in this way. I'm Barb Schleifer, she, her, hers, running for the Park Board District 6 seat to represent Southwest Minneapolis. So I'm running for the Park Board because I just care so deeply about our parks and trails. They are what inspired me to move here 30 years ago. I feel like our parks fuel our well-being. They bring us together, and they can play a really important role in, I believe, closing the equity gap for which our city is unfortunately known. I'm running because I want the Park Board to be better stewards of the land, the infrastructure, and the natural resources in its care. So what do I mean by that? Really, basically, I want the Park Board to take care of what it has: buildings, paths, trees, water, sanitation, maintenance. And I think the neighborhood parks are getting some attention. Some of the regional parks are showing a lot of neglect in some ways. I feel like the Park Board must collaborate with the city to rebuild an outdated stormwater infrastructure system that's hurting our lakes and creeks every time it rains. The board needs a serious long-term commitment to native tree planting. Trees are really essential to responding and slowing climate change, and the tree levy expires this year, so we need to do something about that. We can introduce more biodiversity in parks, I believe. We can mow less turf. We can introduce youth to the value, science, and fragility of natural spaces, and we can further reduce the use of toxic pesticides in parks. We can use environmental justice data to identify and address inequities across the city. The Park Board can move toward electric vehicles in its fleet a little more aggressively, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And we can move toward an even more bike-friendly, transit-friendly park system, and pedestrian-friendly too. I'm also running because I believe our recreation programs can be a really important tool to close the racial equity gap. The Park Board uses an equity matrix to equalize capital investment across the city, and that's great. But what about program outcomes? What is the programmatic impact of the Park Board's programs on youth? We need that data so that we can build on what is working, make the case, and really invest in youth. We may not know for years the full impact of the pandemic on our young people, but we do know that our kids need sunshine, activity, social connection right now. They need safe, welcoming parks. Finally, I'm running because the people I've spoken with want a really functional, collaborative park board that works well with others, that's focused on its important mission. They want a park board that listens, that communicates well, and responds to questions. I believe I have the leadership skills and the public service and governance experience that are essential to this role. And I encourage you to look at my website to check out my background or my LinkedIn page. The park board oversees a $128 million budget from nearly a dozen sources. I'm really honored to have the endorsement of the DFL Senior Caucus. That group, I believe, recognizes that having the right kind of experience will matter a lot. And so when you consider what you're looking for in a park board commissioner to represent you, I hope you'll consider the need for both passion and experience. The park board needs leaders who understand budgets, can navigate complex systems, can communicate very effectively, and build coalitions to advance real policy changes. And I feel like I just know how to get that done. I have many years in state government, working at the legislature, etc. So I'm ready to make our wonderful, wonderful park system even better. And I'd be honored to have your support. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Barb. I will then go to Mary Mckelvey, who's also running for District 6 Park Board. Mary, you are unmuted and should be ready to go.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mary Mckelvey, and I'm running for Park Board in District 6 as well. I'm she, her, hers. I care about parks as a parent, a public school teacher, and a coach. I'm an avid cross-country skier and a hiker and a runner and a biker. I'm a team player who believes in working for the greater good. And our public parks have the power to unite us, especially in this moment, and bring us into a more equitable, sustainable future. And I'm running to seize that opportunity. I believe that what benefits kids sustains our whole city. And I plan to bring more park programs and resources to our communities, with a particular focus on youth and teens. This is a public health and a public safety issue, and it's also within the park's scope. I want everyone to know that they belong in our parks. We need environmental stewards, and it's hard to be one if you haven't first connected with nature. There are still too many barriers to access, and it's my priority to remove them. I'm already doing this work to make mountain biking and cross-country skiing more equitable and accessible. And through sports, I've trained in skills in listening, tenacity, and teamwork. I've been watching the park board meetings for years, and I can attest to what Stephanie Musich is saying. At times they are dysfunctional. I will bring better teamwork on the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. I'm already engaged as a team member for our parks and have had the honor of serving on 2 community advisory councils, both the master plan for the Minnehaha Creek Regional Trail System and the Parks for All Comprehensive Plan. And wanted to let you know that your input and the vision for our parks, your input is also important, and you can still put your vision to our parks for the next 20 years, and the link to that survey I will share. I also believe that effective partnerships are teamwork. And thanks to a partnership between the Logan Foundation and Minneapolis Parks, high quality trails, programs, and a new trailhead have brought thousands of new patrons to Worth Park. And through this foundation, I have coached hundreds of athletes of all ages and backgrounds. This winter, we taught over 2,500 new cross-country skiers. This model of public good needs to be expanded to serve many more people in various locations. I believe expansion must address urgent equity, safety, and environmental concerns as well. And I'm prepared to make tough choices to balance this need with the protection of our native species ecosystems and our community health. I will ensure that we're leaving our number 1 parks in even better shape for future generations. From planning to procedure to programming, I will bring my experience with parks to the job as commissioner, and I will make policy that gets more of Minneapolis outdoors and active. Again, my name is Mary Mckelvey. My website's maryforparks.org, and I hope to have your #1 vote. Thank you for your dedication to Minneapolis, everyone.
Thank you, Mary. And I think next on our list, we will have Risa, and I'm going to just find you on here. I think you are unmuted and ready.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Hey, y'all. My name is Risa Hustad, and I appreciate the time you're all taking out of your evening to hear from all of us today. I use pronouns like she and they. I'm a dog parent and currently serve as the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee's representative for Ward 11. I was born and raised in South Minneapolis to a family of small business owners. I hold degrees in outdoor leadership, therapeutic recreation, and wilderness emergency response. And I've worked in the outdoor industry for over a decade. Being outside on my bike with my community is where I feel the most at home. My top priorities for our parks include accessibility, sustainability, safety, and building more robust programming. Everyone in our city deserves to feel safe in our parks. Increasing the strategies that we use to make everyone feel safe and the efficacy of emergency response is at the core of my campaign. I'm a leader in the outdoor industry, but the work that made me want to run for the park board was spending the last year connecting unhoused neighbors in Martin Luther King Park with the supports and services that they needed and deserved. We built a community together, and it reinforced in me my lifelong belief that the best thing about the parks in Minneapolis has always been what they can do and mean to the people here. I waited for the right candidate to jump in this race with the vision I think is so desperately needed on our park board. And that's a vision of what our parks can do for our communities, not just what we can preserve about them. A vision of our parkways that contributes to us leading on climate resiliency. And through the urging of the incredible women I worked with this last year and the neighbors that I trust deeply, I decided that if we wanted that vision on the park board, I would have to be the one to bring it. I don't want to talk about our parks being the best in the country if they aren't the best for everyone. I do want to talk about how enriching park programming can make our communities more vibrant, our parents feel more supported, and our children grow up with more access to nature, healthy peer relationships, and mentors. I do want to talk about what these green spaces can do to help Minneapolis become carbon neutral, so the city can lead the way nationally on climate change. I do want to talk about how accessible parks mean more inclusive communities for our neighbors. And I do want to talk about the important role our parks play in the lives of people who do not have safe spaces to call home. This is the work at the core of who I am, and it's why I decided to run. I invite you to join me in having these conversations, and I hope to earn your support to be your next commissioner for Park Board District 6. Thank you all.
Thank you, Risa. And I think our last Park Board District 6 candidate, Kathy, you are up next. You are unmuted and should be ready.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, first, I'd like to say thank you to the Ward 11 committee for hosting this event and for taking an interest in this race. There's a lot to be paying attention to right now in our community, and so I appreciate you making this a priority. So I'm Kathy Abeni, and I'm running for Park Board District 6. I've been a Minneapolis resident for over 30 years, with the last 13 in Southwest. My wife, Marn, and I made a conscious decision to raise our kids in the city. We were lucky to land on Bryant Avenue, where our kids have had access to transit system right outside our door, and of course, half a dozen parks within a few minutes walk. Public parks, public transit, and public education have enriched our lives greatly. We love Minneapolis and want to give back to the city that has given us so much. I'm a licensed civil engineer, and I've worked for 20 or more years in large public sector organizations, including Hennepin County, the City of Seattle, and where I am now, the University of Minnesota. The business of the park board is nearly identical to my day-to-day work. Unlike other candidates, my learning curve will be small. I'll be able to leverage my relationships with professionals at the park board, the city, the county, and the local watersheds. I have a large network of friends and associates at these agencies. At the University of Minnesota, my network includes people engaged in research, teaching, stewardship, and governance at the Twin Cities campus, the Landscape Arboretum, and throughout the state, and who work in engineering, water resources, landscape architecture, recreation programs, facilities, public works, and the list goes on. I'm an effective public servant professionally, and I would be honored to be elected to serve you on the board. An excellent societally provided parks and recreation system has the ability to be a positive force in people's lives. While I do not see it as the job of the park board to track public health outcomes, it is totally appropriate for the park board to track engagement, equitable access, and participation, and to flex their programs accordingly. Dividing and conquering our challenges in society is a much better approach than everyone running over to one side of the boat to focus on the same thing. The parks, especially ours in Minneapolis, because they are so nature-based, provide a massive public health benefit for every person who uses them and everyone in our city. We are in an amazing position of strength and opportunity to do even better. I hope you can see from my brief introduction that I understand the role of the elected office I'm seeking. I know that we have a lot of problems to solve right now in Minneapolis and everywhere, frankly, but good leadership, laser focused on the things that Parks and Rec do best, adds to the overall positive societal outcomes we all want. And as this is a DFL endorsement, I'd like to close by saying that I've been a lifelong DFLer working in leadership at the precinct level. My first phone bank was for Walter Mondale for president in 1984, and I've been a campaigner for local, state, and national candidates ever since. I have a long history of activism focused on equal rights and now equity and beyond. I believe in the DFL and the values of this party deeply. I believe I'm a perfect candidate for consideration for the DFL endorsement for Park Board District 6. I do have a website as well. It's kathyabeni.com. Please check it out and you can get in touch with me through that. Thank you for your time and your interest.
Thanks, Kathy. And thank you to all of the Park Board District 6 candidates who were able to join us today. One more person I wanted to let speak regarding how the conventions will be run and how the city election is run is actually Audra Whalett from Fair Vote, Minnesota. So Audra, hopefully you are standing by here, and I just unmuted you to talk a little bit about ranked choice voting.
Awesome, I am. Thank you so much. So I just want to say greetings to all of you here in Ward 11. My name is Audra. I'm with Fair Vote, Minnesota. We're a nonprofit organization that is organizing for ranked choice voting in Minnesota and providing ranked choice voting educations to voters in Minneapolis and the other cities that are also using this system. So if you are a longtime voter here in Minneapolis, then you probably are very familiar with the process of ranking your ballot. But if you're a new voter, we wanted to just take a quick minute to explain how you mark your ballot and how the ballots are counted. So this November, voters in Minneapolis will be using ranked choice voting to elect your council member, mayor, the members of the park board, and the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Under ranked choice voting, or RCV, you will rank your candidates in order of your preference, first choice, second choice, third, and instead of choosing just one. So in a single seat race, if no candidate receives a majority of the first choice votes, the least popular candidate is defeated, and those votes are reassigned to remaining candidates based on those voters' second choices. And this just continues until one candidate receives a majority of the continuing votes. RCV works like a traditional runoff, but happens in a single decisive election. Ranked choice voting also eliminates the need for costly low turnout summer primaries so that voters only have to make one trip to the polls, and all the candidates have the opportunity to be on the ballot in November. Ranked choice voting is as easy as 1, 2, 3. The more you rank, the more power your ballot has. So in other words, you want to be sure that if your first choice doesn't make it through the runoff process, your ballot will continue for your second and third choices. And approved by Minneapolis voters and in use since 2009, ranked choice voting ensures candidates win with broad popular support, promotes political diversity, gives voters more choice, and encourages civil and substantive campaigning. So I hope that you have enjoyed the forum tonight, and as you're considering candidates, please remember to consider not just your first choice, but your second and third choices as well. And then please also reach out to us at info@fairvotemn.org if you have any questions. Thank you. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Audra. And I did see, I think in the chat, I think Meg might have made a good note for the convention process. Ranked choice voting is being used for city council and for mayor and for the park board district races. But for the 3 park board at-large races and the 2 board of estimate and taxation seats, you can vote for your top 3 choices in the case of park board at-large, or your top 2 choices in the case of board of estimate and taxation, and only the candidates reaching more than 60% on that single ballot that will be taken will be endorsed. But there is not ranked choice voting for park board at large and board of estimate and taxation for the DFL conventions. There is still for the general, I believe, but just not for the convention process. With that, I will just take one last reminder, especially for the folks who are on YouTube, since I was cut off at the beginning because I forgot to start the stream, just to share real quick what the timeline is for caucuses. Sorry, my screen share wasn't working right for me for a second. But hopefully this is appearing on the screen again for everyone. Someone can nod and let me know that it's appearing. So the timeline again for caucuses, the deadline is April 30th to register. So if you have not already registered, go to caucus.dfl.org or use these dial-in instructions to get yourself registered. Then if you register, you will get a postcard confirmation in the mail to confirm your address. So make sure to follow the instructions on that postcard right away to confirm your address, because if you are going to be a delegate, I mean, if you're not trying to be a delegate, you can caucus and do your sub-caucusing virtually, and that's it. But if you want to be if you're going to want to be a delegate, either way, you'll get your postcard in the mail and be able to vote for delegates, to either vote for yourself or vote for others who are wanting to be delegate. That will take place in May. And then fast forward, once those delegates are elected at the precinct level, we're going to fast forward to June, when ward conventions will take place and the city convention will take place. And those delegates that were elected will then vote to endorse our DFL candidates, both in the ward and citywide. I'll just stop my share here. And a quick reminder, I believe we will be doing a ward convention virtual event similar to this one, where business will not actually take place. That Zoom event is not where the votes will happen, but that Zoom event will be an opportunity, ideally, to have kind of what would be the Q&A session for the city council race in particular, for the ward convention, similar to what you would normally have at an in-person convention, but just having that Q&A event as a standalone activity that would kind of be the virtual ward convention. So with that, I do have an outro video I will play with the at-large candidates, but I'm just going to take a moment to go through the chat here in case there were any questions or anything that came up. I'm not seeing any. So unless there are any final questions from folks, feel free to put them in the chat about how the caucus process works this year. Happy to address it for those who are still alive. But otherwise, I'm going to play this kind of at-large candidate video as an outro, which lasts about 20 minutes. So if you're on Zoom and don't want to tune in to all the speeches, that's up to you if you're one of our candidates. So thank you for joining us. But otherwise, I will share my screen, play this video, and close it out after it's done. And I will, I just got one more question in the chat. I'll share the YouTube link in the chat so folks can find it afterwards. Better make sure I share my sound here.
Hello, my name is Sheila Najad. I use she, her pronouns. This is Ruby, and I'm running for mayor of Minneapolis. I believe that the best solutions come from people who are leading change on the ground. I've been a community organizer and policy analyst for over 10 years. My motto is from the streets to the spreadsheets. I've been leading campaigns at City Hall for safety beyond policing for years. In my work with Reclaim the Block, we've moved millions of dollars that went on to create the Office of Violence Prevention and alternatives to policing, like the mobile mental health response teams. As mayor, I'll fight for real safety solutions that address the core causes of harm and violence in our communities and build true racial justice. I got an early start in cross-cultural movement building by way of my birth. I was born in Fargo to a Persian immigrant father and an Anishinaabe Norwegian-Swedish mother. I moved to Minneapolis 12 years ago to get my master's degree in public policy from the Humphrey School. I built working class solidarity as a restaurant worker and later union member, was board president of the Lyndale Neighborhood Association and lifelong renter. My campaign is called Sheila for the People because I want elected leaders who make it easy for everyday people to be involved in the decisions that affect our lives. From the streets to the spreadsheets, I hope you can join me. Check out more about me and our campaign at SheilaForThePeople.com. Thank you.
I'm Kate Canoos. I'm a mom, a climate strategist, a scholar, a small business owner, and a former state representative. I'm running to be the next mayor of Minneapolis because we need leadership. Growing up, my parents instilled in me a love of community. In our family, a good life is defined by being part of and serving our community. It's a value my husband and I work hard to model with our daughter today. Following my 6 years of legislative service, I led a leadership program at the University of Minnesota. I served as our city's first chief resilience officer and earned my PhD. I now run my own small business and serve on the Bryn Mawr Neighborhood Association board. I know how to use public institutions, like our local government, to help us navigate this era of climate change, racial reckoning, and economic injustice, so every person, Black, brown, Native, Asian, and white, thrives. I keep an eye to where we need to go while figuring out the step-by-step details about how to get there. Right now, in Minneapolis, we are at a potentially transformative moment that will define us for decades. We can all feel it in the unsteadiness of things, the conflict, the uncertainty. These feelings are not surprising. We're still moving through a global pandemic. We're aching from the trauma of police murdering George Floyd and the unrest and racial reckoning unleashed. The question I ask now is whether we will use this moment to build the Minneapolis we know is possible. I believe with real leadership, we can. I believe that with the right leadership, we can reimagine what our city is capable of being. It means not playing on people's fears about public safety, but rather doing the collaborative work of transitioning us to a public safety system that is racially just and keeps every person in the city safe. Realizing the potential of this moment will take courage from all of us. It takes courage to imagine a future different and so much better than where we are, and it takes courage to actually build that future together. The only way we will develop the courage to imagine and build is by leaning into each other and pulling out what is best in each of us. As I step forward to run for mayor, I ask you to join me, because I know together we can do the hard, joyful work of building our city's future. I hope to earn your support in this convention.
I'm Jacob Fry, Mayor of Minneapolis. Our city is at the center of a national racial reckoning. George Floyd's murder at the hands of police has been recognized by the courts as just that, murder. But that verdict is the most basic measure of accountability that can be afforded to the Black community, one that's been historically denied. And these cycles of tragedy and trauma aren't going to interrupt themselves. We've been doing the hard work. Our administration has invested more than any in city history to build inclusive community safety systems and support violence prevention. We've implemented progressive policies that promote accountability and transparency in the police department and worked alongside the community to rebuild trust. But we shortchange this conversation if we limit it to community safety and policing. We've done big things over the last 3 years, from record-setting investments in affordable housing production and preservation to building new programs like Stable Homes, Stable Schools, which has effectively served thousands of public school children, over 90% of whom are BIPOC, and designing intentional vehicles like cultural districts and the Commercial Property Development Fund for targeted investments in BIPOC neighborhoods. We've also navigated unprecedented challenges together, from a global pandemic to an economic downturn to the murder of George Floyd. We've taken up difficult conversations and done the hard work, and we're only getting started. So let's have that dialogue. Let's chart a course, but let's not trade this opportunity for transformational change for the theoretical. Black residents are eyeing this moment with well-earned skepticism, and so we must be specific about the changes we want to see, dedicating ourselves to serious policymaking and dislodging objects previously considered immovable. Whatever the consequence or the audience, you have my word. I'll tell you the truth. I won't minimize the challenges to achieving progress. I'll continue being a principled leader, guiding this city to not just better times, but a fundamentally more just Minneapolis. Thank you, and I ask for your support.
In Minneapolis, I'm Jerrell Perry, a lifetime resident of the Twin Cities, proud father of 2 beautiful little girls, whose future tomorrow depends on the work that we are able to do today. Which brings us to the moment we are currently living through, the most pivotal moment in our city's 171-year history, starting with COVID-19. We're still walking around with masks in every pocket on our jeans and every zipper in our purses. We're washing and sanitizing our hands now more than we ever have before. Social distancing, 6 feet down to 3 feet in some places. What more can we do? We can make sure that vaccinations are ready, available to every Minneapolis resident that's willing to take one. We can make sure our children are back in school full time with full functioning before and after school programming, as well as our recreation centers. And we can make sure that everybody gets back to work. We can do this, you guys. We can also do police reform by first mandating that deadly force only be used against deadly force. We can go into crime prevention, including crime and violence committed by individuals with firearms. And we can implement youth outreach and engagement programs and also bring them good paying jobs. We can eradicate hunger and homelessness in Minneapolis through the Housing First program and get our brothers and sisters off the street by building more public housing structures with income capped at 30% to pay rent, no more than 30% going towards rent. We can also eradicate application fees and the need for credit checks for anything outside of rental history. Racial reconciliation can come through the Justice Resolution, which will make much needed investments in communities across our city. And at the same time, it will move us closer to opening the intersection at 30th in Chicago, affectionately known as George Floyd Square. We can also do racial reconciliation through community engagement, using churches and faith leaders to bring their different congregations together to fellowship so we can see just how similar we are, starting with our humanity. I did not enter this race because I'm the most educated or hold the most pedigrees. I entered it because I feel like we are in desperate need of leadership that is not only willing to say the right words, but that's willing to take the right actions. In my experience, I think I am more able than do that for you. Thank you, and I look forward to serving you, Minneapolis. Love your neighbor as yourself. God bless.
I believe that better parks are possible, and we can make these critical community spaces more people-focused, equitable, and inclusive for everyone. Hi, I'm Tom Olson, and I'm running for Park Board Commissioner at Large. I have several years of experience working in government and politics throughout the state, including at the Attorney General's Office, the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy, the Minneapolis Community Environmental Advisory Commission, and at the Minnesota House DFL, where I currently work as a communications specialist. In my current role, I work with several legislators and the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus, which has ingrained a racial equity approach into everything I do. Each of these experiences has taught me how to build bridges and work with folks from diverse backgrounds and across the political spectrum. I understand that many of the issues we deal with at the Park Board are nuanced and require the consideration of multiple viewpoints. As an at-large commissioner, I will represent every community and take into consideration the needs and desires of everyone. Yet Minneapolis is home to some of the worst racial disparities and segregation in the nation, and I see it as my job to intentionally uplift and empower the voices of our Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities. There's so much we can do to uplift our community spaces, open parkways to pedestrians, empower our youth voices, and to treat our unhoused neighbors with dignity and respect. There's more to discuss, but know that my moral philosophy centered on equity, community, and the environment will guide my decisions as your commissioner. I look forward to working with and learning from you all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Londell French, Minneapolis Park Commissioner. I'm asking for your endorsement for re-election to the Minneapolis Park Board. In the past few years, our parks have become more essential to the fabric of Minneapolis. With the COVID pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, and the uprising that followed, our parks have been everything. As we spent more time outside to social distance, to heal, to gather, to feed people, and distribute mutual aid to our communities, we faced more complex issues and challenges than I could have ever imagined when I was first elected 3 years ago. I'm asking for your vote so I can continue to do this work. Work like opening our first full-service community school, partnering with Minneapolis Public Schools to offer wraparound services to get our families the resources that they need. Like listening and working with communities to make the nation's first memorial honoring survivors of sexual violence. Work like changing the name of our parkways to better honor the indigenous communities whose land we all live on. I'm proud to be your Minneapolis Park Commissioner. Serving has been the greatest responsibility of my life, and I take it very seriously. I'm asking for your support to continue being your at-large Park Commissioner. Thank you.
Our park system began 137 years ago. This is a legacy. I, Meg Forney, am passionate about the long view of our future legacy. The long view is why I am seeking re-election for one of your citywide park commissioners. The decisions we make today will impact our future generations. I will advocate for these long views. 1, to grow Minneapolis green space to support climate and environmental resiliency. Parks are the best tool for enhancing air and water quality and mitigating heat islands. Increasing vegetation is our best line of defense. 2, to invest in programming for youth by fostering youth employment that creates life skills to acquire sustainable jobs. To develop expertise in stewardship for our environment, and to prevent youth violence through building relationships. 3, to continue to cut barriers for equitable park access for all Minneapolis residents and families. In my short 2 terms, we have increased from 94% to 98% that every resident is within a 10-minute walk of a park. Now that the entire city has been park master plan, policies and practices can be enacted for long-term development and improvements. Lastly, to guide our parks in a financially sustainable manner through establishing empirical, equity-driven data matrix and diversifying our funding stream. Please visit my website to learn more about my campaign at megforney.org. I ask for your support for this legacy for our future generations.
Hello, Minneapolis DFLers. Steve Brandt here, a candidate for the Board of Estimate and Taxation. I'd like to tell you a little bit about me and why I'm running. I came to Minneapolis as a college freshman. I'm a little older than that now, but my love for the city has grown and I've put down roots here. This is the house where Linda and I have lived for the past 44 years and raised 2 sons. Minneapolis is going through some hard times right now, but I'm running because I want to contribute to helping this city recover. I also want to leave my 7-year-old granddaughter an even better city. I honestly believe that I'm the best qualified candidate for the Board of Estimate, the board that sets the annual limit on property tax increases. It also authorizes borrowing for infrastructure projects like street and sewer repairs. In my 40 years as a reporter, I did my own research, analyzed the facts I gathered, and presented my conclusions. That's what I intend to do as your voice on the Board of Estimate. I'm running because I know the city. As a reporter, I immersed myself in all 81 neighborhoods and got to know their residents. I know this city from many different perspectives, and I care for all residents. I'm running because I know city finances. I've read the city's budget from cover to cover, and I've analyzed the debates that shaped it. I've also served since 2017 on the city's capital budgeting task force. I'm the only candidate who has articulated a detailed approach to how I'd go about setting property taxes, one that starts with you before considering other factors. I'm asking you to run for city convention delegate and to vote to endorse me for the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Vote experience. Vote Steve Brandt.
Hello, caucus goers and fellow DFLers. I'm Krista Mosing, and I'm the Stonewall DFL endorsed candidate for the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Thank you for taking the time to get involved, caucus, and build support for the kind of city you want Minneapolis to be. I have nearly a decade of experience analyzing and explaining public utility budgets. I will use that experience and knowledge to serve on the BET. My work will also be informed by my perspective as a trans woman and as someone with experience of childhood poverty. I grew up in subsidized housing, and I'm here today because my community invested in me. City budgets are how we express our values as a community. As a BET member, I will support your efforts to build the city we want to live in. I will work to make the policies that you support possible. I live in one of the many Minneapolis neighborhoods with a history of redlining and disinvestment. Every day, these neighborhoods bear the consequences of our city's public safety failures, and in 2020, they bore most of the catastrophic destruction precipitated by the murder of George Floyd. I will support the work to end this city's legacy of neglect and harm for these neighborhoods and the people who live and work in them. I earned Stonewall's endorsement for this race because I'm committed to the values of equity and inclusion embraced by our community. I will examine every act of the BET through this lens. As a BET member, I will amplify the voices of those who have historically been excluded or marginalized by city budgeting processes. My campaign is already building greater understanding of the BET and what it can do for the city. To learn more about me, my campaign, and about the BET, please visit my website at krista4.bet. There's an email Krista link if you want to contact me directly. Once again, I appreciate your time and involvement in this process. My name is Krista Mosing, and I ask humbly for your support and your endorsement to serve on the BET. Thank you.
Several days a week, I wake up at 4 a.m. It's a little before 5, and I'm going to work. I've been doing this line of work for the last 13 years, working in a grocery store. It's been scary this last year, especially as a frontline worker during a pandemic and getting an early case of COVID. The pandemic has impacted my family on a financial level. My husband recently lost his job in March. My mom, a retired elementary school teacher, needed support as well. I know what it's like to be a homeowner and a renter in Minneapolis. This is one of the reasons I'm running. I know that people are struggling right now. I can relate. We need to have a tax plan now that is cognizant of the fact that people are struggling and having a hard time paying rent or paying their property tax. The other element of why I'm running is to protect social services. We have to be careful to not cut taxes too much so we don't cut funding for our social programs. Social services are going to be essential to keeping our city going. Our city is in a crisis. I literally run to crises. The Minnesota Senate passed a resolution honoring me for saving a person's life. I pulled a person out of a burning car on Highway 94. This is me, an everyday working class Minneapolitan. I see the tax plan, how it affects people's lives, and not as a number. Know that if you've struggled during this pandemic or known somebody who has struggled, know that I'll be fighting for all of us. Please join the campaign at www.az4bet.com. Thank you.
All right. stop that music. All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much for joining. Those who are still on the Zoom call. I will go ahead and share the link in the chat to that YouTube live stream if folks want to share it in the future. And with that, I'll just say thanks again for taking time out of your evening. Thanks to our candidates for speaking. And make sure to go to caucus.dfl.org before April 30th and register. We'll see you all at the convention.